Chains, Chapter 22. When I woke, the barrel of a gun was stuck underneath my chin. Men's voices shouted, boots stomped, a rain of hands grabbed me, countless bodies, smelly breath, unwashed feet, my head felt cracked into three pieces. A woman shrieked and shrieked. She was a crow shattering the air with her harsh calls. I moved, not by my own devices, my toes dragged in the dirt. They tried to pull my arms from my body, ripping my arms off a cloth doll. They dragged me from one place to the second place. More shouts, more shrieks, and whistles and calls and rumbling thunder voices. They dragged me from the second place to the third place. Every voice sowing the wind, all the things summoning in whirlwind that would sweep us away to drown in the deepest sea. My thoughts would not line up like good soldiers. They swarmed afield and fled, chasing the blood that dripped from my head and stained my shift. My eyes were swelled up so hard to see through. Someone had stolen a tooth or two. They tied my hands together with a prickly rope. They tied the rope to the back of the cart. They tied a horse to the front of the cart, and the horse lifted one tired hoof after another and dragged the cart. And the cart dragged me up the broad street where people smiled and laughed and pointed. My eyes cast down, the cobblestones mocked me too. I tried to figure who's in the wise of the matter, but my own name escaped me. I knew only the pain in my head and the iron taste of lost teeth. My memory broke into bits when they beat my head. They took me to the dungeon under City Hall to await my trial. The jailer locked me in a cell with a toothless madwoman who hurled into the corner and spat at me. She pulled the hairs from her head and dropped them into the mud. She was near bald. At sunset, the jailer came back with a cup of water and a piece of foul pork half the size of my hand. Dirty men in the other cells fought each other all night long. On the second day, we heard shots and screams from the world above us. Then came the boom and the roar of the cannons, followed by the crack of the musket fire and the sounds of hundreds of boots shaking the earth. Some prisoners hollered in the panic and tried to pull their chains from the stone walls. The madwoman in my cell laughed and laughed, slapping her skirts. At last, the noise above ceased. The jailer threw buckets of cold water on the men who had lost their senses in fear. They had said for us to shut our gobs. The British had sailed their warships up the North River and had fired on the town. But now all danger was past. Anyone who continued to blubber would feel the lash. I said not a word. The second night was the same as the first, filled with moans and muttering and scratching and the sounds of teeth and claw. It rained. Water pooled on the floor and soaked through my shoes. Rats wandered in and out of the cells, squeezing their fat bottoms through the bars. I dared not sleep for fear they would bite me. The madwoman and the rats stayed in the corner, eyes red, waiting for me all night long. On the third morning, the jailer unlocked my cell and motioned for me to follow him. The madwoman laughed again. He took me up the stairs to the courtroom. It was as big as the inside of a church, with the same white stalls and dark wood. The windows were of clear glass, grimy with neglect. They stood behind a rail, kept my hands tied, and shook with fever and hunger. "Oh yea, oh yea, oh yea," called the man in the shadows. He said more, but his words slurred together. A tall man wearing black robes with a long wig sat in a table and was raised on a platform. He was the judge. This was my court, or this was a court. My head was broke, and my sister was stole, and I was lost. A woman with a crow voice, her that threw the picture at me, stood up. I raised my head to look at her. Someone poked a stick into my ribs hard and hissed at me. I lowered my eyes. Voices buzzed and blurred into words I did not understand. Lockton finally remembered. Lockton, Madame Lockton, her that bought us, her that sold Ruth away. I kept my head down and lifted my eyes, though they pained me. The pain was good. It drew back curtains in my mind and forced me to pay attention. Madame was pretending to cry into her lace handkerchief. "And I am but a poor woman, alone, my husband having fled for reasons I cannot comprehend. I plead with your honor to assist me in the correct punishment of this girl." The judge frowned and asked questions of the two officers who stood near Madame. I wanted to ask about Ruth and where the blood on my shift came from and who broke my teeth, but I was the only person in the room whose hands were tied, so I kept silent. Questions were asked of the incidents, and lies were given as answers. Finally, the judge said, "Where's the housekeeper who saw this crime, Miss Lockton?" "Becky is indisposed, sir," Madame said. "She suffers the ague. There are no other witnesses to the events you describe? A stranger stood in the back of the room. I was passing in the street, Your Honor, he said. I heard the commotion and saw the girl fleeing. I observed the destruction myself. There are several other people standing willing to testify, Your Honor, Madam added. Her tears had mysteriously vanished. The judge used the end of his quill to scratch at the itch under his wig. It is clear that this slave has violated the person of her master, destroyed valuable property, and attempted to run away, all contrary to the laws of our colony. State, Your Honor, reminded the lawyer. We are a state now, independence and all that. The judge rolled his eyes. Colony, state, who knows what will be next? He sighed deeply. No matter. This girl's crimes of insolence, property destruction, and running away from her rightful owner are not devious enough to warrant a sentence of death. Do you have any wishes as to the punishment that I should consider, Mrs. Lockton? Madam sighed deeply, like my behavior caused her great sadness. She is a wilful girl, Your Honor, with numerous character defects. I believe a permanent reminder of this might prove an appropriate remedy. Her words stuck in the air like flies caught in a spider's web. I could make no sense of them at all. I could make no sense of anything. The judge scratched at his wig with a fresh vigor. You want her branded, then? 20 strokes of the lash would be more in keeping with her crimes. We are now led by men in Virginia, I am told, land of my birth. I assume, Your Honor, that in Virginia we do not tolerate rebellion of slaves. The judge nodded. Once kindled, rebellion can spread like wildflower. Do you want your husband's initials used? Madam shot a sideways glance at me. I prefer the girls branded with the letter I for insolence. It will alert people of her tendencies and serve as a reminder of her weakness. The judge picked up the gavel. So be it, Sal Lockton. It is the order of the court that you be branded on your right cheek with the letter I in punishment for your crimes against your lady mistress. Crack. The gavel cracked on the wood block. Next case.